All right, piss and vinegar day 109, accessory day, traps, neck, and calves. So today I want to talk about my nucleus overload experiment and what nucleus overload is. First, if you don't know what nucleus overload is, it's kind of a term coined by Team 3D Alpha 12, 13 years ago now, maybe 10 years ago, I don't know what it was, but basically the concept is, well, in your muscles you have the cell nuclei, which contains genetic material. It plays crucial roles in regulating protein synthesis, which is basically building muscle, and other cellular activities. But in context of bodybuilding, protein synthesis is increased the more nuclei you have within the muscle. This is otherwise known as muscle memory. So if you have trained for an experience, a large period of time, and then you take a break, and then you come back, you will build much more muscle much quicker than the average Joe, because you have higher nuclei density than him. So you have more uptake of your protein synthesis, which allows for more muscle building. So that's what muscle memory is. It isn't some magical thing. It's basic science. And the thing is, when you train, you increase nuclei, and even if you don't train super hard, you will increase the nuclei. So if you don't train super hard, hence why high intensity is so important, you don't necessarily break down the muscle tissue enough to make a adaptation response, or your body doesn't have a reason to adapt, but you will increase the nuclei, among other things, which I'll go into in a second. But when you train high frequency, low intensity, you can theoretically train every day relatively safely without overtraining, because if you're doing, say, 3-4 sets of 20 to 30 reps on, in my case, traps every single day, your body can recover from that because the intensity is very low. Your central nervous system is not going to be impacted, and muscles recover within 24 hours. So what you're really trying to recover on normal training with high intensity is your central nervous system, but that's a totally different topic. So theoretically, you can train every day, or you really demonstrably can train every day with lightweight, high frequency, low intensity, high volume. And this way you can train every day, increase the muscle nuclei, which will then increase your response to training, because you'll have increased protein synthesis. But you also have a bunch of other properties that can potentially go into this too. When you train a muscle every day, you get the inflammatory response, which increases your sarcoplasmic size. So you have the sarcoplasm, which holds fluid and glucose. The bigger that is, the bigger you look. And about 15 to 20% of overall hypertrophy from training is from sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. Now, most of it, or 80 to 85%, even more than that potentially, is myofibrillar hypertrophy, which requires intensity. However, the sarcoplasm can be increased, and part of why you look so big when you eat carbs is the sarcoplasm is larger because there's glucose in there. So training high frequency will also increase your sarcoplasmic size. And then on top of that, when you build enough nuclei, potentially, and it's not proven in humans because we can't cut a human up, when they're alive, but it's proven in every other mammal that hyperplasia can happen from this sort of stimulus. So your nuclei or satellite cells will be donated, in which case you actually, rather than building the muscle, in myofibrillar hypertrophy, you break the muscle fiber down and then it builds back up larger, but you don't increase the muscle amount. You have a set amount of fibers. Hyperplasia is when you donate one of these satellite cells or nuclei and you actually develop a totally new muscle fiber, which means if you had, say, 10,000 fibers within your bicep, you would now have, say, 10,050 or 10,100 or whatever, however many fibers you then cause or get from hyperplasia. So this is also a theoretical benefit from nucleus overload, is the increase in hyperplasia, which could mean almost, you're essentially changing your genetics, your epigenetics at that point. And then the last one, which is scientifically proven, is the increase in your your capillary mass. So the little blood vessels that run through your muscles. This is absolutely provable that if you train a muscle with high frequency and almost in sort of a muscular endurance format, or like in the case of the study, they used a bunch of men riding exercise bikes. After a month, they increased their quadriceps capillary density by like 10-20%, which is a huge increase, which then serves in your pumps, which then increases your sarcoplasmic size, because then you have more blood flow, which then gives you a bigger pump, which then gives you more sarcoplasmic density or volume. So, and then you also have more nutrient partitioning, and then there's a bunch of other science, or bro science, that goes into this, where I'm not going to go into that, but you could speculate a bunch of other things. When you increase blood flow in an area, you have, your tendons and ligaments will be less likely to be injured, because there's more blood flow going to the tendons and ligaments, which are already 10 times less blood flow than the muscles. So there's so many benefits to having much more blood flow in an area. You have increased recovery, etc., etc. So nucleus overload has so far really been thought of as this thing where it's just, you just increase your nuclei, very cool. But it doesn't seem like anyone really talks about the hyperplasia possibility, the sarcoplasmic possibility, the definite capillary mass or density possibilities. So that's what I kind of wanted to talk about today, which is, there's a long-winded explanation, but hopefully this gives you in-depth detail of what it is, and hopefully it's not too sciencey in my wording that you are confused as fuck right now, but I'm sure you guys are intelligent enough to understand what I've just said, at least loosely. Now, in the last 2, maybe even 3 months now, I've been trying to train traps every single day. Keyword here is trying, because I will forget, and I'm inherently lazy, and I oftentimes suck at habits, but as often as I possibly can, I've been training my traps every day at the end of my workout. Sometimes I record it, sometimes I don't. I'd say in a given week, I probably train my traps on top of my already high intensity day, maybe 3 or 4 times. So I just do the leverage shrugs that you guys might have been seeing me do, where I just simply do, I don't even count my reps or sets or anything really. I just kind of get a good pump. I try to get as much blood flow in the area as possible, give the muscles a response that some stimulus is there required for some potential myofibrillary hypertrophy, but it's very nominal, but more so increase in nuclei, sarcoplasmic size, potential hyperplasia, and the capillary density. Ideally, I'd be doing this every single day or 6 times a week. I don't do it the day before I do my accessory days, because I'm going to do very heavy shrugs the day after, so I want to give myself a little break. But really, I probably wouldn't even have to do that, honestly. I'm just being lazy, I think. But I'm trying to train them every day. So far, not so much. I think my trap gains have increased. I have fucking terrible trap insertions. My mid and lower traps are pretty well developed, actually. They're getting much better. And my upper traps are getting decent too, but traps are very much genetic. Like, if they insert low down on your neck, which mine do, you're kind of fucked. But that's the part of why I'm doing this experiment, is I so very much want traps. Though I'll probably never quite have much of a pair of traps, at least from the front. I want to see if I can get them, as big as possible within my frame and insertions. And again, so far, my mid and lower traps, they're developing quite a lot, and that's a really good area to develop, because that gives you back thickness. It gives you those little, knots that you see through a dude's shirt from the back. Unfortunately, the upper traps, though, which are realistically more important, because you see them from the front a lot more, and they give you that kind of I don't know, like an M, or like this thing where it's like you got 2 boulders, like one in your traps and one at your shoulders, and it's a really good look, especially in the shirt. It really gives away whether or not someone lifts or not, is if they have big traps. Now, I don't have them. I'm trying to get them, and that's why I'm doing this experiment. So I'm going to do this probably for another 3, and then I'll probably switch to something else. I am going to be cutting in probably about 2 months. So if I'm doing this for another 4 months, 2 of those months will be during a cut. And it'd be interesting to see how it goes through a cut as well. I have absolutely had experience with this before, namely in my right arm for arm wrestling. And it's very obvious, the difference. For a long time, and still until this day, I train my right forearm pretty much every day. I've done it much more extensively previously. Now I just do pronator only. I just train my pronator every single day. But for a very long time, I would train just about everything as far as arm wrestling goes. Cupping in, pronating, rising, all the different vectors in arm wrestling. I would do that every single day with my right arm, and with a lot of volume, a lot of frequency. And my right forearm to this day, is an inch bigger than my left, and my right wrist is half an inch bigger than my left, and my right wrist is almost an inch and a half bigger than it was when I first started doing arm wrestling. So it definitely works, and it's, this has been a perfect example because it's easy to tell the difference because it's one arm versus the other. And you see this demonstrably through arm wrestlers and professional arm wrestlers within themselves who will target one arm far more than the other. The biggest one is Devin Larratt, who's been just training his right forearm for like 4 or 5 years straight now, and his right forearm is so much bigger, so much stronger, and the bones are different and they're longer. That's the craziest thing, which I would contribute that to capillary density because but also Wolff's law. When you train a muscle, it contracts against the bone, and the bones then get larger. So Devin Larratt's, not only is his bone structure bigger on his right side, his hands are bigger. His arm is longer. His right hand and right arm is longer than his left by like a centimeter, which is not crazy, but that's pretty crazy for a fucking 50-year-old man. So who knows what training a muscle every single day could potentially do for you on a long continuum. And after 6 months of doing this, depending on how my traps look, I might just keep doing it. But there's other areas I kind of want to improve upon too, especially my chest. My chest absolutely sucks. It really fucks my physique up in such a shitty way. I might start doing chest next, and I might do that for a long time because I think really the chest for me is even more important than my traps. And I kind of want to switch to chest, but I kind of thought upon or kind of agreed upon within myself that I would do 6 months of traps, so that it's what I'm doing. But as soon as the traps is over, there's a good chance I'll start doing chest. Maybe I'll start doing both and see how my recovery goes. The problem with chest is there's a lot of different, anterior pressing movements I do on a daily basis, or not a daily basis, but like a pretty frequent basis within my training. I do chest days, I do shoulder day, and shoulders. The shoulder girdle is a bit more or less forgiving when it comes to high frequency. So, I could see that running into issues. I would have to really be, diligent or have to choose the correct exercise for my chest to train every day without my shoulder giving me issues. And there's a lot of shoulder issues I already have. So that might be an issue, in which case then I might have to go back to traps. But anyway, for now, traps. See where that goes. Hopefully by the end of this, Nucleus overload journey of 6 months, my traps have gained something considerable. And again, it's hard to really tell if it's that or if it's the high intensity training I'm doing or if it's the bulking I'm doing. But the best proof is when you do one arm at a time. For the forearm, for example, that's the best way of proving yourself that Nucleus overload works. So if you're skeptical, try doing one forearm every day for like 6 months to a year, and you'll see the proof in the pudding. Anyway, see you guys tomorrow for more Piss and Vinegar. Bye-bye.